everybody. I'm Becky Rogers, and I'm here with Deanna.
Hey, guys.
And we are not quite super moms. And we have a surprise for everybody today. And today we're going to actually introduce our kids. So Deanna's kids are going to go first. And so tell us who you are and how old you are.
I'm Grayson. I'm 9 years old, and my favorite thing to do is play Pokemon.
Okay, good.
Wait, let's jump on it.
Say your name.
My name's Gideon.
How old are you?
5.
And what do you love to do?
Watch Power Rangers every day.
Power Rangers. Awesome. Okay, come on up.
My name is Asher. I am not 8, and my favorite thing to do is Pokemon.
What's your name?
Wiley.
Wiley. How old are you, Wiley?
5.
And what's your favorite thing to do?
Love Jesus.
You love Jesus? Oh, that's sweet. Okay, so we're back, and we just wanted you guys to meet our kids, especially since we're going to talk about them today. I was talking to a mom recently, and she looked at me in the eyes and she said, I just don't know how I gave birth to this daughter. She's nothing like me. And I could relate to that 1,000 times over. And I thought maybe we are not the only moms that feel that way, that sometimes our kids are just nothing like us. And they may have, some of our same features and they may look like us, but so much of how they are, their personalities or whatever, at least one of my children is nothing like me. Asher, he is. I don't mind telling, because eventually someday when he hears this and he's older, he's going to be like, yeah, Mom, I'm nothing like you.
Yeah.
And Riley, on the other hand, by the way, she says it like Wiley, but it's really Riley with an R. But anyway, she is so much like me that it's almost infuriating, because I actually know what she's thinking most of the time, because I was like that once upon a time as a little girl. And I can remember, the feeling of, if I say this, then my dad will give me what I want.
Oh,
so I know how she thinks, and so it's a blessing and a curse kind of to have kids that are like you or not like you. But you were telling me that Gideon is just not like you.
Yeah, Gideon is just like a little crazy person.
What 5-year-old isn't?
Right.
Really.
He's just so random and says weird things, and Grayson is definitely more like me. He's just kind of laid back, and he wants to talk about serious things and have more conversation about, like, where does fog come from, and Nazis, which I'm just like, oh, Grayson, he's only 9, but Gideon wants to talk about boogers and dirt, and I'm not like that. But same I guess another thing that's different about Grayson, though, is, like I was telling you earlier, is he feels a different sort of way toward Gideon than I felt towards my siblings. I always, if somebody gave me a piece of candy, I would ask for candy for my siblings. And, Grayson's not that way.
Right.
He's like, ooh, can I have another one for me?
Right.
And, I'm like, okay. I wasn't necessarily like that. So that's definitely something that I struggle with as a parent, seeing a behavior that my child shows that I didn't have or don't necessarily have myself, you know?
Right. Yeah. My daughter, like I said, is very, I don't know, we think a lot alike. She likes a lot of the same things. Asher, on the other hand, he's sarcastic. Like the other day, he was asking me a question, and I started to answer, and then he asked it again a different way. And so I kept explaining, like, why is he not getting this? And then finally he said, Mom, I already know the answer to all of this. He's like, I was just sarcasting, which is not even a word. But it was funny at the time, especially because he is just like his dad. My husband is super sarcastic. And if you know him, you know that he's just ready with an off-the-wall sarcastic comment any moment of the day. And that's kind of who Asher is growing up to be more like. But even still, Tom is more introverted and quiet, maybe reserved a little bit, especially with people he's not, familiar with.
Yeah.
Asher is like never met a stranger.
Right. That's how Gideon is.
Just walk up and talk to you and, whatever. And so they just are different. And it's funny because I honestly look at my kids sometimes, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Deanna, but I look at them and I think, how did I give birth to both of them? They're completely different than each other.
Right.
They kind of look alike a little bit, but they are just so different. Their personalities are different, and like I said, one of them's like me, one of them's like my husband, and it's just so crazy. But I think too that even though God made them unique, and we know that from Psalm 139 where he talks about we were created in the innermost parts of our moms, and just how he made us just like the snowflakes, how they're different. Every single one is different. And I think that affects how we direct our children and how we raise them and how we mother them, because it's not like we have to be different and have different rules for each, but we do handle them differently, and maybe you feel like you just don't know how to handle, one or both of your children or whatever, but I feel like the Lord knows that he made us unique. And he actually says in Psalm 127, verses 3-5, it starts out by saying, children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. A reward is like a blue ribbon you get at the end of a science fair, or whatever. And it feels like sometimes, so many times, that our kids are not, we just take them for granted.
Yeah.
I was saying they don't feel like a gift.
Right.
And it just feels like, well, this is how it is. This is just our family. This is how it is. Right. But they really are a gift, and even the things that make them unique and the things that make them different, those things are a gift too. And a lot of people tell me, people have been telling me ever since Asher was little that he's going to be, a leader someday because he's so strong-willed. And I always think, oh, that's great. He's going to do great things for God. But, the truth is, it's not always just about what they're going to do for God someday, but their differences and their unique qualities make them precious to God just the way they are. I was thinking today, I was driving and I was thinking about this thought and how, God created all different types of trees. And there's, the evergreen trees that, we use them for different purposes. We have them for Christmas in our houses. And then there's flowering trees, and they're so pretty this time of year. In fact, I was looking out the window, and I have a tulip poplar in my front yard. If you don't know what that is, Google it. But I looked out the window this morning, and there's a huge yellow flower right there on my tulip poplar. And I was like, this is why I love that tree. I can't remember the rest of the year why I love that tree. But this time of year when it flowers like that, I'm like, oh, I love this tree. But they all have different unique qualities. All the different trees that God made have different unique qualities. And they don't necessarily have to do anything to be unique. And they don't have to serve a specific purpose to be unique. I think our God enjoys variety.
Yeah.
I think he just enjoys having the different types of foliage or whatever.
So how boring would it be if we were all the same?
Boring. It would be so boring. And I think that that's part of why our kids are different. Our God just enjoys variety. And it does say in his word that they're a gift from God. And we forget that sometimes. But the same passage, the very next verse says, children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. And I think we can switch that out for a woman, because we all know the men don't give birth. But still, just they are like arrows. And that's what kind of got me thinking, all the arrows are unique too. And we have these precious gifts that God gave us. And it says, how joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. And I looked up the definition to be sure I had it right. But a quiver is a bag that the archers use to carry all their arrows. Mm-hmm. And, our children they do bring joy to our lives. We kind of forget. We like to think about, especially as moms, we get so exasperated about all of the crazy times or whatever. But the truth is, there's so many times that my husband and I look at each other and think, that was hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, nobody else makes us laugh the way our kids do most of the time.
If you have a young child, like, please, we did this with Gideon the other day. I don't know why, but I decided to ask him words that, like, I knew he had no idea what they meant, like escargot or escalator or I don't know what all the words were. Yeah. I was just like, what does this mean? And he gave, like, the most hilarious answers because he had no idea. And it was so wonderful. We laughed for so long about what he said.
Better than a board game.
Yeah, it is. It is
better.
It's fun to play with them.
Yeah, and they really are a gift. And I think as moms, we have this, a lot of times, not all moms, because there are some stay-at-home dads or some, dads that are really involved. But as moms too, like, I think we sometimes set the temperature and the direction of our home a lot of times. We kind of help direct our kids in the way that they're going to go, even if it's just by the day-to-day interactions.
Yeah.
Our husbands have that unique ability to be the morning and evening. Sometimes they're the morning and evening parent where, we're so tired at the end of the day, we're just like, go bug your dad for a few minutes, or honey, will you take them to the park? Because I've just had my fill today.
Right.
But as moms, and dads have their own responsibility to direct the family.
Yeah.
But moms, we have this unique opportunity to be the ones kind of catching almost every little interaction and really directing them like arrows. And I never really thought about the fact that an arrow has to be, pointed. And there's a target and there's an end game in sight with an arrow. It's going in a direction. And even if our kids have different personalities or different, perspectives than we do, they're still a blessing. And, sometimes we just need to step back and think, how can we find common ground?
Yeah.
Because even though our kids do think differently and they like different things than we do, both of our boys are in karate together. Asher just started with Grayson. Grayson's been doing it for a while. Mm-hmm. But you won't find me and Deanna there practicing those karate moves. Like, that's just not our thing. The dads,
I don't know anything about Pokemon either, and they're obsessed with it.
Yes,
so.
They love it. But there are things that we can connect with them on, and it's important that we find those things so that we can relate to their day-to-day lives. And that's the parts where they need to teach us sometimes. What is it that you're interested in? And then we can help take what they're interested in and then use it. God will help us know how to use it, but then we can direct them in a way and say, you can use this for God someday. And I don't know how Pokemon can ever be used for God, and that's fine. That's fine. It's entertainment. But at the same time, just making them into strong boys who can follow a leader. To me, that's what karate is about. Just taking instruction. He thinks that sensei hung the moon.
Yeah. Well, they're learning discipline, which is good.
It is good. And he was willing to sacrifice even summer camp this summer because he didn't want to miss it.
Oh,
He was like, no, I can't go to summer camp. I don't want to miss karate. I'm like, buddy, it's okay. Just 1 week. Just 1 week. But finding that bridge, especially when they're struggling. And sometimes they're struggling with school or social stuff or obedience just with us. Finding that bridge is how we end up directing them and how we keep the lines of communication open. And, I think we both, Dee and I talked about it, and we both felt like at times when we were growing up that our parents just didn't understand us.
Yeah.
I remember writing in a journal one time, nobody gets me, nobody understands, you know, I mean, the angst
Emo
of being,
journal.
yes, a junior higher or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But we laugh now, but I really felt like that.
Yeah.
Like that was legit.
100%.
You know, and when we talked about it, we both thought, what if our kids feel that way?
Yeah.
What if our kids feel like mom and dad just don't get me?
Right.
I just have a different personality than they do, and they just don't like the same things I do, and they just don't get me. And to me, that closes the door.
Absolutely.
We lose the ability to influence their lives and help direct them and give them love and guidance and relationship.
Right.
When we let them feel like we don't understand them.
Well, even as an adult, you know, if someone tries to counsel us and we don't feel connected with that person, or we don't feel like they understand us, then we're not going to be as willing to listen and to take the guidance and see where they're pointing us, you know, in the direction. The same thing goes for our kids. If we don't make a connection with them, then they're not, you know, they're not going to be as willing to listen to us and to say, you know, I'm going to listen to what my mom and dad say, because they've been there, they understand.
And our kids know when we're making an effort.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where, if you're making an effort, you're doing it right. If you're trying, you're doing it right. You know, if you're trying to build that bridge, and there's lots of ways, you know, you can build the bridge. We've talked about it before, just, you know, taking time out to spend time with each of your kids individually. And this is super hard. I know I know a family, and they have like 7 kids. And I've talked to a few of the kids, and they've referenced times where their dad took them bowling. And I was like, who all went? And they were like, just me and my dad.
Aww.
And you know, that to me is huge. If they can do it with 7 kids, I can do it with just 2.
Right.
You know, even if it's just a trip to Walmart or a trip to the grocery store, whatever it might be, just really quick. And that time to just connect and say, hey, how was your day? Or what did you think about today? And there's lots of, you know, you can go on Pinterest and find all these questions that are better than how was your day?
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before.
Right.
But, you know, just kind of finding a way to relate and connect to them.
Yeah, spending time means a lot.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of adults feel like they, you know, or they're missing something because their parents didn't spend time. They were always at work, or they were always busy, you know.
And it's easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah, it is.
As an adult. But ask to understand, you know, try to find out what they're interested in. Ask them why it interests them so much. And, you know, try to get on their level and see if you can kind of connect that way. But all of it is ruined if we crush their spirits, you know, and the Bible talks about in Colossians, you know, dads not crushing the spirits of their kids, because even though we have to discipline and we have to, you know, set them straight sometimes, because arrows sometimes will go off in their own direction if they're not, you know, turned in the right way. And some of that does require discipline, but at the same time, you know, we don't throw the arrow away.
Yeah,
you know, just because it's going in the wrong direction. We don't
pick it up and we give it another chance.
Yeah, we give it another chance. And, you know, obviously there's a ton of different ways you can apply, you know, what exactly is the end goal? You know, what's the bullseye that we're aiming them towards? But honestly, I think it's pretty simple. And that is just a real relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes to point them in that direction is what we've, you know, that's our goal. That's our plan. That's our calling as a mom, is to set those arrows right. And I have been discouraged, and I'm super guilty of just being like, whatever, I don't understand what you're talking about. So all this Pokemon is going in one ear and out the other. In fact, I think it happened on Thursday with that conversation about Pokemon. He was really excited about some card that somebody gave him, and I was like, oh yeah, great, okay, anyway, what'd you get on this test or whatever? And the truth is, I really don't know why it was exciting to him, and I should find out.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Grayson left some cards in his pocket, and we washed them by accident, and they were totally ruined. And he bawled like a baby. And I didn't know what to say to comfort him because I couldn't understand like how precious those things were to him, you know?
Right.
Right.
But it's just finding that connection. And, and then when we do that, we do get influence. Like Deanna said, you know, we get that influence. We get that open door where they'll listen.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to point them in a way that's going to hit the end game.
Well, because we can only do so much as a mom, right?
Right.
We can only do so much. But when they build a relationship with God, then we know they're taken care of. You know, we are only human, and God is so capable of amazing things. And if we have the comfort of knowing that we did our job and we led them, we pointed the arrow towards God, and they have that relationship, then we have the peace of mind knowing
we've done our part.
Right, we did our part, and they're in God's hands.
Yeah.
And what a peace that is, you know? So
exactly. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, we hope this has been an encouragement to you. I know there's all different types of moms and all different types of kids, and you're all unique, and your kids are all unique, and but you're all loved. And if you haven't listened to the last episode yet, the one that talks about being how loved you are, and knowing how loved you are, I hope that you'll go back and listen to that one too, because it's super exciting to know that we have a God who is extending his love and grace to us. We just have to walk in it. We hope this one about arrows has been an encouragement to you, and we love all of you moms. We hope that you're having a great day, and please like and share and comment. Tell us what you think. Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, and tell all your friends. I hope you have a great day. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.